3. We're live. Good night, Belizeans at home and abroad. This is the Belize Affairs Show number 127 for Wednesday, 10th of April of 2024. My name is Leonard Brackett. I'm one of the panelists on the show, and we also have, for right now, on the show itself too, another one of our regular panelists, Miss Sharon Pitts. And we also have in the background, I see or one of our next senior panelists, but apparently he was busy doing something engineering wise, so he's not available right now. So I'll just turn over to Miss Pitts and ask her to grace us with a short prayer, if you don't mind. Could you just bow your head or close your eyes or something? Thank you very much, Miss Pitts.
Yes. Dear God, as we gather together as Belizeans and other people, friends of Belize, through the power of your almighty spirit and your creation in enabling us to come together
Amen.
at the speed of praise and with the strength of praise, we beg your continued guidance and governance.
Amen.
Let the words of our mouth and the meditation of our hearts be acceptable. And there, Father God, please continue to help us as a people, as a Belizean people,
Amen.
with one identity and as a nation of Belize amongst the international community of nations and wider humanity,
Amen.
to carry with us after this Easter time the Beatitudes of Christ, dear God, so that even as we look after policies and comment on Belizean affairs and matters, we help to uplift those who would otherwise be voiceless, dear God,
Amen.
and try to speak conscience to our nation, even as we
Amen.
offer and participate in dialogue, dear God, to bring Belize forward. And by your redeeming grace, dear God, may our people, our country, and country never be lost. We thank you.
Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Uh, Thank you very much, Ms. Pitts, for um, your supplication on our behalf as a country and as a people. And we do wish to proceed further. I don't see any of our other panelists available to us yet. So I'll just take the privilege and do the reading myself.
Yes.
Um, we usually do, as part of our program, we usually do a short reading. And we'll read from Proverbs. I'll read Proverbs chapter 17 and I'll start at verse 1. It reads as follows: Better is a dry morsel and quietness therewith than a house full of sacrifices with strife. Verse 2: A wise servant shall have rule over a son that causeth shame, and shall have part of the inheritance among the brethren. The fining pot is for silver, and the furnace for gold, but the Lord tried the heart. Amen. That's our reading for tonight.
Amen.
And
Thank you.
uh, the chairman for tonight is not available currently, or at least at this point. So we'll just use one of our backup plans for such occasions, as in this particular instance. Um, well, before I do that, I'll stall a little bit more, hoping that maybe the chairman might show up, so I don't have to step on his toes and go in a different direction with the programming. Huh? So I'll just ask Miss Pitts if she would have any comments that she might want to grace us with, on any
Well,
particular topic, just for at least another couple of minutes while I try to
oh,
put this thing on live, right? I
yes,
just
thank you, Mr.
so,
Brackett. And good night, Belizeans at home and abroad, and friends and others who feel a special place in their heart and their journeys with respect to Belize. There are two things which come to mind, Mr. Leonard.
uh,
Saturday, one is about traffic, the new regulations. The other is always there, and it has to do with food and this poverty that is being visited on our people.
mm,
It seems that bread they get boxed out of people's mouth, dog they eat Belizean supper, and food security is gone. It has been jettisoned.
mm,
I like to go to the market, and I used to feel that, you know what, you're short of being on a farm and picking your own fruit, or, you know, when you used to barter and people change it, this one will catch fish,
uh,
exchange the extra fish and clean it first, you know. That's what
uh,
I'm told. In the old days, I guess before my time, and then they shared with the hunter man, and he when may catch some kind of wild meat, he would have dressed it,
mm,
or his children and wife, and exchange it. And if you had a crop of fruit, you know, you exchange or you share the bread that came out of the kitchen, you know,
or maybe some
two of
cassava or
them.
some
Right.
cocoa, any kind of grown food,
So,
no?
yes, we had the milk of human kindness flowing amongst our people, right? And you had good home economics and nutrition and healthy, you know, like tea, dinner tea or culture, when people would be eating maybe hash fish with Johnny cake or fried jack or tortilla, or you get a piece of stewed chicken. It might look tiny, you know, but the gravy and the herbs and seasoning in it, and of course, made with love. And you'd
Mm,
have maybe a piece of cheese that might have been cut with a ruler and definitely with some kind of skill that had it thin enough to be shared amongst a family. Milk, I understand one time it was door to door milk and the pointed bread and so on. And then one time it would be liver with a lot of onion and black pepper and, you know, the gravy. So we had a healthy, healthy diet, planting the Creole cranberry, just about
mm,
everything, you know, your fruits, your vegetables, fruit seasonable and watermelon, then you eat it.
mm,
Cocoa plum, then you eat that. Stinking toe, bokut, then you eat that maybe on the back step because, you know, granny or mommy no want the
smell.
kitchen smell. But that was God gave us tonic on a tree. And I understand
Mm,
if you're in the village and they had a hard one, you put that on a tie to a string and you soak it in the river, right?
mm-hmm.
So what I'm saying is, and then
Yeah,
cornfish was
decide
corn
and drain it out.
then hung on the outside of house. I think I still remember seeing that in Belize City.
Mm-hmm.
Mine is sometimes conchas. I don't mean blue conchas, right? But conchas so that they flip on there, right? And you know, the show fly no bother me. But up people generally and fish by the string, super, tambran and so on, weights of measure and units. You had the almud at market, right? And remember, then things never level off. They were heaping. Things like lime, as I understand it, you used to get one or two for brata if you buy fish. And then watermelon, you could go and knock the watermelon or sound it. And guess what? I don't know if you remember Mr. Brackett, you know, this world before Hattie and long before me. I born after Hattie.
Mm.
Uh, I remember they used to cut a little triangle on the face of
Mm,
a
and then
watermelon and take it out
you could see it.
and let you taste it. And then if it met with your approval, it was sweet enough, you buy that. If not, the vendor would cut it up and sell it in slices, right?
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
So
You,
we had fruit.
you make me what I started drain.
Then the orange, you know, you had orange sweet, sweet, sweet in abundance.
Mm,
Limes, grapefruit, and no make I forget. Remember the canals when fruits used to come by door from Shaboon and
mm.
to, through the waterways and the canals, and then you had the trucks with
Them
beer.
bamboo cane
Bamboo cane, yes. Oh,
and
yes. And
orange and grapefruit and
harvest
man.
time, the churches would be bedecked, no? The churches who practice harvest. The
Uh,
thing that is disturbing, right, is that as a Belizean, it goes against my dignity and decency. Two things I heard this week. The soles, it is said that there was one time that what they got recently, or BDF, or men who protect our country who serve,
mm,
got something that was equivalent to slop to eat, right? So only pasty tomato thing and some kind of swill, right? Now, you could say you're doing diet, but I think that's a poor excuse because a proper diet does not consist of that. We can see big tourist billboards with how many thousands or millions of watermelon eaten by the tourists
hmm
and bacon eaten by the tourists. Well, plantain not eat like rice, I believe.
When you
Food
could find
instead
it,
of selling cocoa roast. Cocoa the market they sell expensive if you could buy it. You have to buy the runt. I went to market Saturday and my reality check. They had oranges which look different than usual, more golden that you would see in the States.
hmm
And they were being sold by the pound. Now the problem is that you see that creeping in like communism by the poundage with sour sop and watermelon. Watermelon was pound ever since in a sense. But I mean the other things being added. So we had a system where I had brata too, right? So you get
not
only
anymore.
extra. Now the problem is with the fruits and the food. We come off a fisherman Christmas over Easter. But really and truly, I used to say that people who go and buy at supermarkets and Publix and wherever, Chinese shop, they no need to complain if the thing in a can, the can beef or the ramen or the whatever, if the price gone through the roof. I think they need something short of lashing because they go to market and you buy healthy and first hand and it's an interchange and culture. But now market is getting off limits people's pocket. Market is frightening. The shock of reality, the shock. And I think now some people are even there, got a market, right? And I had a friend who used to say, don't quarrel with farmers for how much they sell their produce for. Because they have to toil, sometimes bad crop, good crop, wastage. But what I see is that prices of quite a number of, and I don't call them commodities. Commodities smacks of when you will trade on a stock exchange or send abroad. The basic nutrition thing where people have to eat
Every day.
to live every day.
Mm.
Um, you are not buying luxuries. To me, if you buy luxuries, you buy strawberries and blueberries imported and seasonal vegetables not produced in Belize. So I think that prices right now that are, I'd say about 150% across the board of what food and vegetables were being sold for. And I noted that somebody was asking for something and the lady suck it teeth card, they never have it. It's a time people would buy breadfruit because if breadfruit nice, you could fry it,
You boil
Good
it,
food. I
yeah,
love it. Boil it, you could make salad, a lot of things, right?
mm-hmm.
Healthy. Nice, better than potato chips sometimes if you put it next to something, right? And even tourism catching on. But what we have is that with export, we get double bank and triple bank of people and our nutrition. So you have a collapsing of our health system because your people's health, I quote, is a nation's wealth. And if your people can eat well and make proper choices with their food, right? You will have people malnourished. And it's that prophetic. It's happening in Belize right now. We have to have a serious, serious, to my mind, uh, resolve and a will. And I am tired of hearing of how many cow and the tail they get exported across the border. Seaweed, then they look for export. No, that's high nutrition, vitamins, proteins, all kind of thing, right? And once that catches on, like in Tanzania, where 98% of what they encourage people to produce is exported and still not satisfying the export market, you will find that, and you could trace it, right? Fish, most side not got at the co-op again, it got to the tourism sector, right? The leftovers come in. Lobster. One time that I'm a poor people food. Remember you used to go get the claw or the crayfish and just chew that down and that nicer than the anything else, right? Crab, roti, roti, I don't know how to pronounce it. That sells sometimes for $70 a pound abroad, right? Even rice bun, where some are will like with gravy. That is called scorched rice, and I've seen it in the set in a supermarket. I think somebody said the Jews or certain people might use it as part of their religious ritual. Point is though, what Belizeans see and what we ignore has to do with our health. We have to, as a people and country, it doesn't go far to say you have a ministry and include the word food security because you're paying lip service. Hungry belly, they tell empty belly keep heart. Empty crocus bag can't turn up. I want a full crocus bag where it gorge at the public trough. Uno find uno can't bend neither. Have some mercy, have some conscience, man. Belize is too rich in food support. I think somebody quoted Rufus X as saying in Belize you have to work hard to starve. Well, you know what, people? When you go buy the cilantro and chop off the root, if you want to leave cup with a little bit of dirt, man, stick it in or something. Sprout the beans, the watermelon. On YouTube, today I saw some vegetables which I say take 1 month. So you have your little short things. And the Belize city that I read of for Belize tongue long ago was clean, tidy, and people had their gardens, not just the tropical foliage, but as well the recycle old thing. The entire were cut up pretty. They leave vessel and so board the whole, you know. The land is rich, right? And if you have space, you can do something. An acre of land can feed a lot of people. 10 feet by 10 feet can have a sufficient vegetable garden for a family.
Thank you very much, Ms. Pitts, for such a nice presentation. And people are going through a lot of hardships. The economy is kind of not spinning fast enough so that everybody could benefit from it. And the prices are getting out of control. And apparently, there's very little that the government is able to do or are trying to do to make a difference. When in fact, that's what a government is supposed to be about. But I just want to go into another part of the program for tonight, and I'd like to um, read a commentary that I had written before, and it goes like this: the following comments were made between Mr. Leonard Brackett and Mr. Robert Thornton as part of a Facebook thread about the Portugal Agreement. And I titled the particular item Illegal Portugal Agreement Facilitation. Mr. Thornton had made a post, not a posting, a text, basically as part of the thread. And he said, Jarosowic's legal opinion was submitted to GOB in April, stating that the definitive agreement is illegal and Mendes' opinion was submitted in May. So why did they reject Jaroszewicz' opinion while accepting Mendes' opinion a month later? I would like to contextualize what this comment was about and the following ones that I would be making myself as a back and forward between myself and the gentleman. We all may recall that at a certain point in time, one UDP minister, Mr. Contreras, at the end of the last election cycle, just before they demitted office, had signed some documents, presumably ordering the government to make additional laws in the House. Whichever government would have been in power would have then, had he signed that document legally and constitutionally, then the government would have been compromised into making additional laws to validate and justify bringing into existence that agreement. So when the PUP government came in and took over governance, they were supposed to have basically trashed that agreement because it was null and void. It wasn't done properly to start with. Nor did that agreement have the acquiescence of the other ministers in the UEP who would have had to sign off on that particular agreement to carry or to make it have any semblance of legal or legitimacy. However, the incoming PUP government decided to continue the matter as if it was legal. In other words, they decided to lend legitimacy and legal support to that dastardly effort that preceded them, to the point where the Prime Minister had solicited legal advice, because prior to him soliciting legal advice, we were on the airwaves on this particular show asking that the government get rid of that agreement and make sure that they don't entertain giving any legitimacy to it. In April, Mr. Jaroszewicz had given his 50-odd pages of legal advice on the matter. And before he was able to give that legal advice on the matter, that 50-odd pages, he must have been given a contract at least a few weeks before to enable him to have performed his job in such a substantial way. So more likely than not, that request for services or for legal advice by the government may have been done at that time, probably a few weeks earlier, like I stipulated, and that would have put the timing as middle to late March. So what had happened then is that Mr. Jaroszewicz gave his recommendation and his advice, legal advice. Of course, let's specify to the public so that they can know who the person Mr. Jaroszewicz is. He was one of our lead international lawyers dealing with our Belizean affairs at the International Courts of Justice in regards to this Belize-Guatemala issue. He was one of the preeminent individuals that was supposed to be representing us. So when the Prime Minister went to him to solicit legal advice, he was soliciting someone who we in Belize would consider to be a solid international lawyer. So he had the response from Mr. Jaroszewicz, 50-odd pages, and instead of taking that to cabinet and discuss it, he went ahead and solicited, we're talking about the Prime Minister at this point, went ahead and solicited additional legal advice from another gentleman in the Caribbean. But what he did was not just solicit legal advice, he gave the gentleman copies of Mr. Jeroswich's legal advice that was contrary to what the Prime Minister wanted to push. So then, Mr. Mendes gave him what he asked him to do. He gave the Prime Minister opposing recommendation than what Mr. Jerosewicz had provided. And then the Prime Minister took the opposing recommendation from Mr. Mendes to Cabinet and tried to hoodwink Cabinet into going along with him to take out of Cabinet an acquiescence by Cabinet to take the matter to the House because they have a super majority in the House. But at that time, our country got lucky. We had some young politicians who had just started their political career who did not take kindly to the Prime Minister, try to pull a fast one on them. And therefore, some of them objected. And as a result, the Prime Minister did not have enough people in Cabinet on his side of the motion or to carry the day in terms of getting the matter out of Cabinet. It takes a majority of the Cabinet members to bring anything out of Cabinet forward. And the Prime Minister did not have those numbers. That is news. It's nothing new. We're talking about something that happened, but I'm just bringing this thing to your attention because I want to go somewhere with it. And I just didn't want to drop the hot potato, in everybody's lap without prefacing and let people at least try to recollect what all this is all about and how come we are where we are today and why I'm about to say what I'm about to say. However, the Prime Minister went ahead and pulled back the matter out of Cabinet, but within a short space of time, he did took the matter to the House and pretended that he was tearing up the original documents. That is to say, had it been the original documents that he had torn up there when he said that the thing that Mr. Contreras did was not valid anymore and could not fly, and he was tearing it up in the House there as doing a masterful presentation as to say, this is all done and over with, when in fact he was tearing up a copy. He had the original in his office that they still were working on, and as of today date are still working on. Nevertheless, why I'm bringing this up again is because recently he was asked about that matter, and he said that as far as he's concerned, he was negotiating with the people in Miami, with the cruise company. He didn't say on behalf of Puerto Rico, because as we know, the Prime Minister is not supposed to have no shares in a Puerto Rico. It's a private endeavor, and he is always saying that he don't get into private business. But yet he wants to suborn the whole of our government structure and system to take up a private endeavor and go and negotiate on behalf of these people from Puerto Rico instead of sending them go do their own negotiation with the cruise people that was going to support them. He went and put his nose and the government into those people's private affairs and subordinate free government to the extent of promising them that he's going to see the matter through, and has been fighting ever since then to try and come up with laws that they say they're going to put in place to determine out of these three entities that are trying to create a port in Belize, in the Belize vicinity, which one of them was going to end up being successful. So Mr. Ashcroft decided to sue the government, which we had told him was going to happen anyhow. We told him that there were documents being prepared for lawsuit against the government. And not too long after, the documents was dropped on us. But our dear Prime Minister decided to go one step further. He gonna get rid of Mr. Ashcroft by settling, as he had said, all outstanding agreements with the Ashcroft organizations. And for a report that the Ashcroft organization had loaned less than $40 million to the expats, well, to Mr. Expat, I would say, he turned around and have Mr. Ashcroft telling us that he evaluated the port at $400 million, but he was willing to take a little more than half as a settlement. How the hell we gonna go from less than $40 million to $400 million? And the port no belong to Mr. Ashcroft. It was only in receivership, and it still belongs to us until Mr. Ashcroft gets his money. So what happened then, as we found out, almost $400 million for all outstanding things was promised to Mr. Ashcroft. $76 million was given to him in one instance. And then upfront, another 45 million US, which is 90 million Belize, was given to start the deal. And then in addition to that, every year for the next 5 years, we are going to give the man 25 point something million dollars. When in fact the man was only getting, when he was running the port under the receivership status, he was only getting 12 to 13 million dollars out of the port. But he will stop operate the port, but he can get twice as much as what he was getting when he was operating the port. So all the money that the government was hauling out of people's pocket to raise the price for goods and for higher gasoline price, and the teachers not being paid their full salary, and all the other civil servants not being paid their full salary, and all the retirees not getting their money, and all the shenanigans that the government was doing in order to come up with all these extra money for go give Mr. Ashcroft instead of take care of the country's business, we end up getting stiff. And the government could not perform correctly until when they finished with the new budget and use the new budget now in this new budget year to finance what they are now financing. So I just want to, I see we have Gregory in the background there ready to, our next panelist. I just want to read a little bit more of this thing here, please, to contextualize. I was just trying to preface just now, and I went all the way around dealing with a whole lot of ancillary issues for contextualizing purposes, because everybody is not keeping all these things in their head. Some people don't even know what's going on behind the scene. So Leonard Brackett, went on to say to Mr. Turton, after what I read that he had posted, I went on to say, Mr. Robert Turton, because they're hell-bent on perpetrating a fraud on Belize and Belizeans at home and abroad, as it appears they have vested interests and control the powers of Belize governance and will do whatever they can to facilitate the retirement scheme for the boys, as Lord Ashcroft had said. Mr. Turton retorted back to me. He said, Leonard Brackett, is it Cabinet's decision to determine the validity of a legal opinion? Jurassic versus Mendes. Jurassic saying it is illegal and unenforceable, while Mendes says that it is valid. And this is the AG Marine resignation. And this is why the AG Attorney General Marine resignation, and this is why a black man, Sylvester, was elevated to the position to be a rubber stamp. Basically, what had happened is that the Prime Minister had solicited, as would normally be the course of action, legal advice from the then Attorney General, who was Miss Marine. And because she could not countenance the thought that after she gave proper legal advice, and that they had also gotten this advice from Mr. Jurasowicz, and the Prime Minister refused to tell the members of cabinet what the truth was, and try to bamboozle them into going along with him to put the country over a barrel, and then try to blame the UDP because Mr. Contreras had put his signature on the document. The end result was that Ms. Marine, and I think as a decent Belizean and a patriot, I would say, more likely than not, was one of those persons who objected to the Prime Minister's trying to bamboozle cabinet. And instead of she went along with the program at that level and realizing the damage that was going to be done to the country, she stepped aside and resigned or moved on, which is what Mr. Turton was commenting here, that she moved on, and then we had the new Attorney General being put in place as a rubber stamp to go ahead and facilitate the process. I went on to say to Mr. Turton, no, Mr. Turton continued thereafter, after that last paragraph. He continued on and he said, Leonard Brackett, it goes to show that they really hoped Mendes' opinion was valid. How can they totally disregard Jurasowic's opinion when he is the more advanced and more renowned lawyer? Then the PM sits there in cabinet and lies to the public and say that he is the only one that saw Jurasowic's opinion, which unto itself was a barefaced and bold-faced lie, because he don't have any capacity or capability. He's not a lawyer, nor does he understand anything about legality, to the extent that he is going to avoid all the other 5 or 6 lawyers in his cabinet, and he is going to be the only one to go and look at that document in order to arrive at a conclusion as to whether or not that document was legal or had any constitutional validity to it. That itself was a bold-faced lie, because he could not of himself interpret that document for all those other guys. Like I said, which is why Miss Marine had resigned. But anyhow, let me read this stuff, because I'm distracting and time is running out for me as well. The AG never reviewed it, is the question that he was asking, which I just stipulated earlier that she had reviewed it, and which is why she had gotten upset and decided the best thing to do, if she can't prevail when it comes to legal matters, and she being the highest legal authority on behalf of the government when it comes to legal matters, then for all intents and purposes, it's like they don't need her, or they're brushing her off, right? He says, Mr. Thornton went on to say, when did Johnny Briseño became a lawyer to be able to interpret legal opinions by himself? Besides his AG, he has Francis Dolores, Henry Charles, Kareem, Shebat, and the unelected Chris Coy, as well as Eamon Courtney, unelected as well, as lawyers in his cabinet, which goes back to say the very same thing I was stipulating earlier. He has all these other lawyers, but he can tell the public that nobody else in his cabinet as lawyers was privy to this information, only he. And he interpreted that this thing wasn't good, that Jurassic, that's why he didn't brought it to cabinet. Instead, he went and further do shopping for legal advice, but he used the material that Jurassic gave him to send to the other gentleman, so the other gentleman could provide him some cover for what he actually wanted to do, which was to say something that opposed Jurassic's opinion. Let me read the rest of this little part here quickly. Yeah, I passed it already. Come on, okay. Okay. How come Anthony Marla, who is not an attorney, was the only person to reject Mendes' opinion. Of course, this is what Mr. Turton is querying, right? How come Mr. Marla is the only one? When in fact that was not the case, because Mr. Marla was one of the person and probably one of the vehement one them. But it took more than just Mr. Marla to constitute a majority in cabinet to have stopped that thing in its track. Even as of today, they still can't get it completed and moved on with yet. So the point that the gentleman, Mr. Turton, raised there about Mr. Marla is valid to a certain extent, but not totally contextual, because it took more than just one person opposing it for it to have been ditched. So I went on to reply, iterate back to Mr. Robinson. I said, Mr. Robert, Mr. Thornton, by the way, sorry, not Robinson, Thornton. Mr. Thornton, Mr. Mahler and others didn't wish to associate themselves with that treacherous agreement. And that was my final comment on that particular point or subject. I see we have Gregory in the background. Greg, would you like to introduce yourself, and if you have a comment to make on that particular item?
Good night to the Belizean people at home and abroad. Thank you for tuning in to this 127th edition of Belizean Affairs. And I thank my co-host, attorney at law, Mr. Shuntis, and my good cousin for sitting virtually with me. I believe that our present government is in denial. As I said before, the lacking of external and internal policies except using executive powers to deal with foreign investors. And anyone can see, as it is well shown, that the government is going around taking campaign finances from these investors. And in return, concessions should be given up.
Mm-hmm.
And that is why when state banks said they wanted to sit and talk with the prime minister, he tried to play a shenanigan game only to learn that state bank mentioned that he had received campaign finances from them. So when you speak about all that is going on with the Portico deal and the port of Belize and Lord Ashcroft, you can see very much how eminent it is that the government wanted to settle with Lord Ashcroft because I believe he felt threatened that certain
Publicize.
things would come to the public
Mm-hmm.
eye and ears that he did not want it out there. As far as having learned men and women in the cabinet, I don't believe that based on what the Prime Minister said about the council, that they are adequately telling him the legal sides of what is happening in this country. Because if that was so, I personally believe, after I have read the definitive agreement and more than one sure stated for myself that it was unconstitutional because of the way it was set out, I think most people who was listening wanted to familiarize themselves with what I said, only to find that now we're down the path where in reality it was rejected in the House and we are where we are today. So
Mm-hmm.
I will leave it at that for now and I go back to you.
Thank you very much, Greg. Um, Sharon, do you have
Um,
any comment that you'd like to make in that?
me that they Mr. Brackett, Mr. Brackett, I see what is happening in Belize, and I notice that one of the pattern is that there's always a kaleidoscope of confusion. And I sometimes wonder at when one thing is looked to be the fault of one person. And to put it colloquially, it brings to mind, you know, when Brian Nancy wash the same egg over and over again. We have collective cabinet. We have what is being visiting on our people. You have to call it out, you know. Sometimes we say all the trees, but we know they say the wood and vice versa. There was corporate colonialism.
Mm-hmm.
And that are the problem with it. And then
Ms.
very
Smith, on
yes,
that point, in Belizean rock Creole, we are saying it, gangsterism. But anyway, sorry about that.
man,
That's
people out there that say
couldn't
that are
resist.
cracked economics. What we have is that we have our patrimony, we have our natural beauty, we have our World Heritage sites, we have our wealth untold in short. So you see these things being pawned out like Belize is a pimper's paradise. You just don't bring sand to the beach, right? We can develop, or we can, actually the irony is the less human built sometimes, the quality of life is what has value more than anything else. Whilst you can still have some creature comforts, but Belize is being overturned now. They hugged and they live high, and the voracious appetite of those who will want to come as tourists, a kind of disposable thing they're looking at with respect to your people, and they'll take your country as disposable that your pampas too. Point is that all the burdens being visited on the people of Belize and the taking away and the subjugation. What you mentioned, Mr. Brackett, when our government or any corporate entity or private person would seek to bind the government's hand, and I don't know if that can be done, to pass laws futuro in the future. That, to my mind, goes against our very democracy and our sovereignty. I won't say more. I don't think that you need highfalutin legal opinions to be able to see through that. I think we have gotten as a people and as a nation too smart for ourselves. The child would have said, you know what? The emperor new clothes not pretty, you know, marvelous. The man just to expose the pick the man to cover a eye, and the adult man to protect for it. And I'll use a colloquialism too. We it seems to me why these things will continue. I think I used this one once before. There was a circus at Civic, I think maybe the last one. They had one older clown and one short clown who was younger. The older one had on his clown costume and his big shoes with the wrong bottom. I mean, that thing looked like he may weigh 1 ton. And their act was, he would say, get in at the circle and take their bow. The little one follow, and you'd think he would be mimicking the older one and being taught the tricks. But the big one trick was he kick her in a behind. And then when it done, he asked her if more, he asked her. And then he shake his head like he not sure, and he look on the audience. Of course, the crowd they laugh. And then the big clown asked her, mas. And he dey shake his head, but he not dey shake it with a convincing no at all. He dey shake it like he's happy to be a part of the act and the charade and the trick and the little hustle. So Belizeans get hustled because we have a hustle mentality which has been put in place of a meritocracy for our people. When I say we, know we, politicians have imposed that. And the people have been a part of the game because they will transactionalize and sell their vote, which is illegal, for $15, $10, a promise which is always a comfort to a fool. And people in Belize are not just being kept poor, which I hear was the threefold advice given when it was asked decades ago how to keep the people and no. The advice was simple, 3 things: keep them poor. In addition, and I will call it out, and a lot of people don't like it, but you see what? Remember the Indians when they smoked peace pipe one time? Our people are being encouraged. Remember that they drink the dollar beer, the dollar wine, and the dollar rum? No?
Legalize marijuana.
You are being weeded out of society. And you can't blame any foreigner. You will have to look to those amongst you and who have your children entrapped. And for that, I would say, better a millstone be hung around their necks. And you know what? While you dance and be merry, forget whatever and wine and get mellowed out. Human beings have not been created while youth are in their prime to be fading out and mellowed out to the extent that you can't think straight. You take that for your lunch break. And guess what? You walk through the street in the poor houses where a curtain is the divider. Some people have mansion, and they have smoke. But even drift as an environmental person, I know you have scientific things as to how you track particulate matter, smoke, drift of pollution. And we have yards which are 50 by 75 in the city. When you have the breeze, that weed where somebody they smoke, you hear about third hand and second hand cigarette smoke. One of the things about weed smoke, and it's psychotropic. And they can tell you about the one that's agricultural or the one that's this. But have they told you that the cross-pollination and and I even want to say potency, the strength of anything and what it's being mixed with? And when they were saying to the people, well, look, you know what? As bad as liquor, as bad as rum, they never may tell you. They may say, well, either or, one or the other. And people mix. They mix. And you know what was the worst thing? When their children at their school, when that cereal looking thing, and they made a claim that sweet lace with marijuana. No, it was drugs. And I described to 3 children under 10 and a teenager who were sent home from school. The only way I could have described that thing today, if they get it quick, that like bead and coral snake. It will look like it charm you. It attractive, but anybody will put that amongst you have no go, they're up to no good. Or people are being taken out, but worse than that, or people are weeding themselves out while everybody else living off the hug and hair of Belize and all the good resources of Belize being squandered. Where is the mercy? Where is the saying that in Belize you can't go far without people being linked by blood, consanguinity, or affinity? Then say people will smile with you all. Why are you doing that to them? Then people, the person who you consider uneducated, who you have pulled the rug over, you might be in a river tomorrow, and that person might save your life. They have their swimnology. But without that, people, Belize can afford people dignity and humanity. Strengthen our people. What are you afraid of? That if they sober up long enough, they will start to think and they will see through all that is being visited. Then it give people stick for broke their back, and then it bend over, and then it say more, more, more. And if they are saying that, Then they invited pan herself.
Thank you very much, Ms. Spitz, for such a lucid statement and clarification on the point itself.
And
Um,
sometimes one other thing.
oh, uh,
Remember, watch when people start to jump ship. Another talk when they put pan the gang plan for walk ship. When they start to jump ship, I'll say no more.
okay, thank you very much, sir.
Self-serving, self-serving.
Uh, I have another item that I would like to read here, and this one was generated because of my good cousin, our next panelist, Mr. Greg Brackett, had posed a question in one instance, to which I decided to take up the question and expound on it a little bit from my vantage point. Uh, this particular item here was written December 2nd of 2023, basically a few months ago. It says like this: the following commentary was made by Leonard Brackett as a retort slash answer to Mr. Gregory Brackett's question on Belize's Affairs show. I titled it Government of Belize Acting as a Scofflaw in regards to the Portugal deal. My cousin, Mr. Gregory Brackett, our next panelist sitting here tonight with us, had asked a series of questions. It says, Mr. Gregory Brackett, I said to him, thank you so much for tuning in to Belizean Affairs show number 73 and for your questions. I really appreciate it, sir. And I did not completed my statement there, which I would have liked to have said, thank you very much for affording us the opportunity to have you bring up those questions so that we could have been able to discuss them a little further on. I proceeded to say the answers to your three questions are three no's. That is to say, no, no, and no. Question number one: shouldn't foreign investors fall under open tenure, especially in tourism? I went on to give answer number one as open tenure or tender should be reserved for government contracts, bidding protocols. That is to say, when the government is offering contracts in the public arena for services or materials, supplies, or whatever. But because of the way our constitution is structured, it is not plausible or possible for the government to then delve into private entrepreneurship and put them into the same category as an open tenure circumstance. So I said open tenure should be reserved for government contracts, bidding protocols, and not for private properties, entrepreneurship, or international treaties obligations, such as what we have in Belize, which is what the Ashcroft organizations, they always try to use on our government to hustle money out of we treasury, sometime when they still not do nothing, then they get paid. Why? Because of the international treaties, the way they're structured, and because of the way our constitution is structured, and the way the laws are put together, the contracts are put together by these. I was about to disrespect myself. By these people who work in these law firms, who put those contracts together for those foreign investors and foreign entities. And it's the same boilerplate type operations they do from one contract to the next contract to the next contract for different companies. I won't get into the detail of that because
If,
otherwise, expand the
if I may,
presentation.
my good cousin,
Yes, sir.
that question that I had asked that you just had
Uh-huh.
question about,
That was question one. I didn't finish the
isn't
answer
it,
to it, but
isn't it
proceed,
the
sir.
same thing that
Go
is
ahead.
happening right now with the Portugal deal?
Exactly.
That is
It's
why I
exactly
asked
what's
the
happening.
question.
I
That was
know.
why I asked the question back then,
I know.
because to show how executive power was used to bypass the procedure.
And the Constitution itself. But if you let me finish read the next part of it, you'll see
Go ahead, sir.
exactly what you're saying is what, because we had been discussing these matters before, and so you'll see the light of what is it that I was trying to return, no? That it's along the same thoughts that you have had already provided, as well as myself had provided in a previous discussion. Let me just read it out though, right, for the general public. Um, I went on to say, uh, is an anti-constitutional on is anti-constitutional. In other words, what I'm referring to now is what had come before, and I need to reread what I had read before because of the fact that it needs to be read one after the other so it contextualized. And my attempting to read the second part just now, for one reason or another, even in my own head, I was questioning what is it that that part relates to. So for answer number one, open tenure should be reserved for government contracts, bidding protocols, and not for private properties, entrepreneurship, or international treaties, obligations, etc., because it is an unconstitutional under uh, protection of right to work clause or citation in the Belize Constitution, Chapter 4, Part 3, Section 15(1), which states no person shall be denied the opportunity to gain his living by work which he freely chooses or accept, whether by pursuing a profession or occupation or by engaging in a trade or business or otherwise, etc. That is to say, the Constitution then spoke to the answer that I had given when I said no as regards to number one, because to go and say yes would mean a contravention of our Constitution as it exists right now, and as well the international laws and treaties for international business operation. All government go and make these treaties with other countries, and those other countries people have money and they can come and do business in our country and put our government and people over a barrel. But we Belizeans don't have that kind of resource to go and do business in their place and try to reciprocate to put their country and people and laws over a barrel. Uh, you have another, or you have something you want to add before I go to question number two, Greg or Sharon? Sharon?
No, it seems to me that Belize have people who sometimes they look mediocre, but when they go abroad, they right. Our people, I am of a view that our constitution protects us. It has to do with the policies of state and those who are determined. I don't blame, to a certain extent, those who come here and take chance of Belize, because it seems that it's because our leaders and our people allow that. We allow that. So we seem to have gotten a reputation where people come and shelter under the rule of law to do their business, and that we respect accords in international law, which is both of those are excellent. I wouldn't have that any other way. But one, charity begins at home, and the Commonwealth of Belize, the patrimony of Belize, is entrusted to us for our people and for our generation, our quality of life, our well-being. We see things such as our foreshores and beaches being, and we could take a whole show on that. Where are the people who know, reminding our everyday people that, you know what? Nobody should be blocking you from your beach, from your foreshore, your right of way. You shouldn't have to get some license or privilege to exercise in common with other people. You
Your
know, I
riparian
understand that
rights.
Cayman,
Your
it's
riparian.
colloquially said that they tell the people, somebody who visited a Belizean told me, that the people there both, if somebody bad enough to build a house on the foreshore, on the right of way, if their kitchen there on it, they block you, open the kitchen door and pass through. If their living room in there, walk through. If their bedroom in there, walk through. Now you see those things, and that is how, to my mind, you signal to people, right? All those elderlies used to be able to talk about 66 feet. That was second nature, right?
Your
If you have an
riparian.
emergency, you
Your
can stop.
riparian
Nobody.
rights.
If anybody gets some privilege by way of a limited license to put a dock or pier, you can't keep other people from it. You can't close off the right of way. You can't give developments. Even Mexico, when people here were boasting some more than a decade ago, about the early 2000s, that they went to north of the border and they wooed away some development. My environmental law colleague was saying that wasn't so. He was saying that they had the hotels, the 1,000 room, the 3,000 room hotels. And I toured a certain area of Cousin Mel and understudied certain things. But what they had to do, remember Mexico, you couldn't even own land. Costa Rica, 300 feet or meters for sure, you can't even own. When Mexico opened up on certain things, they still protect their people. So they had it that you have to have environmental easements, and they limited the size of the hotels. Now we can learn from all that. You see in Jamaica, the problem happening. Bahamas is a bit more protected of its people. But you see, when people taste that tourism dollar, and then you're told it's all about tourism, you know what? Your people get left behind because we haven't even been able to parlay to our people. And then the other thing is the offshore colonialism that's happening now with the call centers. I'll stop at that though.
No, just close the thought, Sharon. Go ahead. You brought it up.
They,
Go ahead and
they,
close it
they,
out.
they, they call centers. And I managed to tell one of the principals from one, when he didn't want to pay the Belizean who had worked a certain way, and said he managed to claim that before he came to Belize, or when they came, they got some contracts signed to the effect that if people didn't, an employee didn't go on his annual or statutory leave, then it was lost, and tried to stand by that. Well, Labor Department gave a disclaimer that didn't have any owner, and I really didn't believe that, man, because we are so bad that anybody could come from abroad, and things are so negative now that if the businessman says somebody from government told them that, or people will tend to believe, because they have lost a certain, people are derisive, right? I had to tell that man, I said, you know what? Slavery abolished was in British Honduras and the British colonies a certain time, and even our people weren't slaves, we were enslaved, and we, the British Hondurans, always had a sense of our own freedom.
Sharon, our constitution says that nobody should be worked under no kind of principles of indentured servitude. Okay, these things are spoken to. But can I just finish up this part? Greg, you had a thought before I move on to question number 2? Our
Just
time is running.
to
Go ahead, sir.
piggyback on what Ms. Fitz had said, we have to look at the totality. We have the Ashcroft regime under the treaty. Then, apart from that treaty, we have ASRBSI
Doing the same
that
crazy.
is being enforced from just the monetary that is given to the country. We have to look at all these things, which is really against the Belizean people and the government, because it seems like every time any such things happen, look at the solar system they were supposed to implant. These people borrow that money, and those people are going to look and make sure how it should be done, even given the right to bring in their workers. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, that's ludicrous.
A slap in the face.
Anyway, I turn it back to you to finish.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. I want to go to question 2. Um, I open quotation as regards to question 2 to include what you had stated in question 2, or what I consider to have been question 2. And it says, and should it be the Minister of Tourism and not the PM dealing with it? Going back, when you say with it, meaning the ability to deal with contracts and tourism itself. As we now know, the Minister of Tourism was allowed to float a $50 million bond so they could have used part of it to clean up and do things during the municipal elections and town board elections. But we don't want to get into all of that. I just want to stick with the answer to the question on question 2 and give you the answer to that one, where I said the answer for number 2 is the Minister of Tourism alone cannot deal with it. He has no power to bind other ministries and needs their acquiescence and sign off. And more specifically, he needs cabinet's approval and the Belize legislature approval, without which anything he signs may be limited in statutory powers or legal legislative authority, or to have effect of law or be constitutional. I then went on to say the Prime Minister, as Minister of Finance, is the highest authority to sign off on financial matters, tax waivers, for example, concessions, etc., which may also require Belize congressional or legislative approval. So, Mr. Mala and or Mr. Contreras and or any one minister cannot overstep the boundaries or the limits of their constitutional obligation and or the part of the ministry that is entrusted to them in order to compromise or subordinate any other ministry. Other ministries may well be involved depending on the particular project, type of project, or scope of project, or scale, and environmental impact, etc. That was my answer to question 2. I also have 3, but I'd like to give you a chance to expound on question 3,
Thank
what I
you.
have stipulated.
I will respond to that, within I knew when I asked that question what the answer was. And I'll give you shortly a $2 million hotel in the Keys, a glass of wine or whiskey,
Mm-hmm.
the DPOs that Ms. Fitz was speaking about, uh, the use of the IT vets to train the workers now instead of the DPOs training them,
As they
and
were
I can
before,
go
but they
on.
won't
For me.
dance.
So I
Hold
think
on for me. Hold on for me. No, understate that. Do not understate that. You see how the trajectory led to that. We have to understand and not make people forget that you had an institution, Belize Technical College.
Of which I
Remember,
was, of which I'm a proud alma mater. That's my alma mater. That get me where
Belize's
I did today.
brightest medicine, education, economics, the trade, you name it, agriculture,
Mm-hmm.
right? It was, in my view, it produced people who were a large part of independent thinkers. entrepreneurship, mentors, and so on, right? Who could hold their own anywhere internationally, banking, advisors of foreign governments in the Caribbean, in the US, in Europe, in Africa. World class, Belizean excellence. I have coal seeds. You know, that was dismantled. It was cut down because it represented black people. And I will remind everybody, right from the Prime Minister down to the rest of you, all our way black, you know. But it's a self-descript. But if you do your DNA, maybe your racism would dilute out, you would self-correct yourself. The point I'm making, though, is that I think right on this one of these Belizean affairs some weeks or months ago, mention was made or something ran where it was, the whatever you call these call centers or BPO or whatever, was saying that, they have so many more jobs to offer. And it was as though there would have been a feeding frenzy in terms of the political leadership or dealership of this country to say that we could start to train people for that. And we made the comment, I thought we headed that off, that if the companies take 2 weeks to train people for that, why would you be assaulting your tertiary education, University of Belize, for that? Belizean people like talk on phone, they like mimic, they know to put on accent, whether it's American or British or some other mixture, or people are fluent when it comes to being able to speak in a call center setting. I understand that a lot of people who have qualifications are being forced to go to call centers. Now, I understand too that call centers internationally, and that's why I said earlier offshore colonialism, because it was so characterized by somebody whose opinion and evaluation I trust over the decades. It was to the effect that let's just put it notionally, if call centers would have been paying close to the minimum wage that would be paid in the US, give or take, that the political dealership were saying to these people, well, are people well trained, easy, no problem, nice environment, but if you were to give proper such wages, you would be spoiling our people. So keep it at a down rate, so that right across the border to the left, that regime to the left, people from our country were being looked up, but they were sending people here to train in English so that they could go back there. The point we made, though, is that with Belize, if we had leaders and not dealers, they would be strengthening our people and saying, you know what? What about entrepreneurship? It doesn't take much, and our people are well trained, and they should be given the wherewithal. It doesn't take much capital, and they would have skin in their teeth, or what you call it, skin in the game, whatever, to run the call centers, to train other Belizeans. In other words, to contract and have call centers. We don't need foreigners coming and finding vulnerable politicians who will sell off our people on the dealership for a few dollars more, instead of saying, you know what, want to see how the free zone gone? The legislation was good, you know, Belizeans still can't go in there unless then they hide behind the back, when really and truly all you need to do is to pay your duty before you exit back into the rest of the duty country. It was to be small assembly, this, that. Now it's money exchange, and it's a whole heap of other things I won't get into, because I know they're there and I don't deal with anything other than what's straightforward. The thing is, though, these call centers.
No, I was going to ask, can I just finish up this last part of the thing quickly?
Technical college, Mr. Brackett, Misters, Brackett, Belizean people at home and abroad. Call centers should be training their own people. The only way
I,
technical college grounds, even the grounds represent something, should be used to do any trading with respect to call center would be to train
I,
Belizean to run call centers, to entrepreneurship, have the workshop, tell them where they'll find the funding, show them premises, let the premises be a place then where people can rent at peppercorn, a cooperative of Belizeans, just like with sewing factory when it went. I was
Okay.
saying, you
Sharon,
don't let a factory go and then 700 Belizean women out of work if we can produce things that are expert quality in our colloquialism. You even had scissors night, Wednesday night, I am told, when the factory workers, the ladies used to get work and go to the disco or the club or whatever. And that was left to go. Everything that has to do with our people.
thank you very much, Sharon. I just want to deal with question 3 and the answer to question 3 quickly because it looks like we're going to run out of time because we only have 9 minutes left for the rest of the program. So, in the interest of time, I would just like to, like I said, deal with question 3 now. Question 3 continues as such, and it says, and can the GOB of Belize or the government of Belize put a cap on tourism investors? That was the third question in the series of questions that was asked. And my answer to that third question was the government of Belize, GOB in bracket, should not put a cap on tourism in Belize, which could be ruled as unconstitutional ultra vires the Belize Constitution. Under protection of right to work and right to property and from discrimination, etc. Clause, citation, and recent court rulings such as the BSI ESR and the Bear Company, etc. The Belize Constitution, Cap 4, Part 3, Section 15, Subsection 1, and Section 16, Subsection 1, and Subsection 2, and Subsection 3, as well as Section 17, Subsection 1, covers those particular issues, which have already been litigated, and we now know
I
the
want
answers
to
to
say,
those.
though, with respect, Mr. Brackett,
Go ahead, go ahead.
I did a consultancy on it was a National Environmental Action Plan revision, and it was shelf collecting dust. Back then, the carrying capacity for Belize we had already exceeded. I think it was a Blackstone expert something as to the amount of cruise tourists per year, and ideally they should have been converted into overnight tourists. My view is that in keeping with the Constitution, you have right to work is something, but a government licensing beyond the carrying capacity. You have right
Very
to
important
food,
point.
nutrition, and so on.
Very
If
important point.
tourism is causing this spiraling, this quagmire of poverty, and is causing Belizeans to be kept off their beaches, and I would dare say even the little boy down south, who during a COVID curfew, he was on the Belizean beach, was he not in front of the hotel?
Mm-hmm.
Right? The
And he had a
only thing
right.
anybody should have
He got a right.
interrupted him for was to say, child, let me take you home safely.
Mm-hmm.
Safe and sound.
Instead of
Right?
shooting him in the back.
So,
But anyhow,
tourism, Mr. Brackett, you can put a cap on tourism, the type tourism, the licensing. That is something we should have had, and we don't need to commission any study to do it. We check with change and we got a market.
that is where the
Everything
policy.
that is
That is where the
getting off
policies of
limit
state.
Belizean has to do with the unrestrained tourism impact on our people are being told, smile, be friendly to tourism. It's sickening, it's disheartening. The tourists are said to be the tourism investors, stakeholders. But as I said somewhere, Belizeans aren't stakeholders. We're owners and beneficiaries of this commonwealth or
But
patrimony.
we can't.
So other people are guests. It can be that
Sharon,
we are being second and third and fourth, and fifth-class
we
citizens
cannot
in
even
our
get
own
them to pay
country.
their taxes
That is
so that
not
we, the country, could benefit.
acceptable. We rebuke that.
But
And if
anyhow,
we have leaders in
I finish,
government, then they must know to understand what a tourism package should be
they are
and how it
compromised.
is.
They are
And really and
compromised.
truly, sorry, I just want to finish
Yeah.
with this, right?
Yes,
The
because
smart
like I said,
thing, the
they run out of time,
sensible
no?
thing with
They run out
tourism
of
in
time.
Belize would be that we would pivot and we would say, you know what? Quality tourism, less is more, educational, overnight tourism. You know, you would have things where, take it like the Seychelles or so, you go quality of life. The tourist who is um for certain things is more resilient in that they will come back if there's strife, war, hurricane. If Cuba opens up tomorrow
Sharon?
and people flood there,
Sharon?
sorry, I just need
I
to
do,
say that
I know, but I
we
do need
can
to,
make more money
Sharon,
off certain tourism than the impacts of tourism, which is costing us our country and our people right now,
thank you.
unrestrained. And I
Thank you
say
very
that
much.
without apology. If
Okay.
any proper
Sharon,
commission study is commissioned, they will link the dots. But I can
okay.
say that based on my what I had done by way of that consultancy way back then, 20 years or so ago, and based on sometimes even a second guess
Sharon, but
yourself,
I'm working
and you
against the
look
clock.
at some
I'm
things
working against the
and you
clock.
see how the dots are aligning.
Yeah, but I'm working against the clock. So, and at the amount of material that I have that we should have been covering, I don't have the amount of time left for us to cover it. But I did want to, the citations that I just made earlier, for example, section 15 reads as follows: 15.1. No person shall be denied the opportunity to gain his living by work which he freely chooses or accepts, whether by pursuing a profession or occupation, or by engaging in a trade or business, or otherwise, etc. Section 16 says, 16.1, subject to the provisions of subsection 4, subsection 5, and subsection 7 of this section, no law, now this is strong, no law shall make any provisions that is discriminatory either of itself or in its effect. Subsection 2, subject to the provisions of subsection 6, subsection 7, and 8 of this section, no person shall be treated in a discriminatory manner by any person or authority. These are the things that the case that the government lost, where Godfrey spin them wrong and change the case pan there, and they end up they lose it. If they were quick on their feet, these are the fundamental constitutional basis on which they could have prevailed in court. But for lack of proper attention to details, they allowed themselves to wheel and come back. And by the time they got back, Godfrey had them against the wall. But let me finish.
My colloquialism to that,
Yes,
even as an attorney, is the same reason, brah, Anansi wash the egg over and over and
I have
slide
1.5 minutes left.
of
I have
confusion. We need clarity.
Sharon, I have 1.5 minutes left. I think we might have to use another extra 5 minutes added on to the program, no? But right now I only have 1.5 minutes left, and I'll try to close this off so we can take turn in making additional comments, no? So just let me finish this one, please, quickly. You keep disappearing from me, and shucks. Okay. Subsection. Okay. Man. Section 16. Okay, I read that already. Subsection 2. Subsection. It says subject to the provision of subsection. Okay, I read that before. Subsection 3. In this section, the expression discriminatory means affording difference of treatment to different persons who are attributable wholly or in part to their respective descriptions, whereby persons of one such description are subject to disabilities or restrictions to which persons of the other such descriptions are not made subject or are accorded privileges or advantages that are not accorded to persons of another such description. In other words, it's defining and describing the discriminatory practices and processes. No, just want to close off by reading this last part, section 17.1. No property of any description shall be compulsory taken possession of, and no interest in or right over property of any description shall be compulsory acquired except under a particular law, protection from deprivation of poverty. And that particular law would have to be made not by an SI, but it have to be made by the Congress, and it's not the purview of a minister or by ministerial fair. And that particular law has to be done within the bounds of the existing constitution. It cannot be like they're creating something that is outside the bounds of the constitution, which is what they did in the last instance when they went to BSI ESR. They went out the bounds of the constitution, and with their supermajority, they will try to ram that process down, and it didn't go too well for them, as we had told them before then was going to happen. Yield back, Greg.
Thank you. I am quite aware of what you are saying, and as I specified before, the wheeling and dealing using executive power that our Prime Minister has been doing. Because when I look back, especially on what Mr. said about tourism, I must personally say that our government, or previous Foreign Minister, Mr. Courtney, and our President, had a tendency to blame
other people,
Taiwan and Canada, for making our country brain dead. But when you look at tourism, the fault of tourism lies, if there should be any blame as to tourists coming to our country, in our Minister of Police. Because when you have a state of emergency, you are telling the world that you cannot take care of your internal policies. And this is where this came up.
Tonight issuing a warning, not about the danger of the bridge, but about the security situation here in Belize. On March 28, the Canadian government updated its travel advisory for Belize, warning Canadians to exercise a high degree of caution when traveling to Belize. They say this is due to the level of crime in the country. It also advises travelers to avoid non-essential travel to the south side of the city because of gang and drug-related violence. It also informs them that there is a state of emergency over certain areas of the south side and the Cayo district, and points out that other frequent violent incidents include home invasions, muggings, and sexual assault. Today, the Commissioner of Police said he felt the warning was unreasonable, especially since gang-related murders and other major crimes have been down. He feels
I believe the Commissioner is in denial. When you have a state of emergency, you are telling the world you cannot take care of your internal problems. And I've said it more than one time. 3 things the government should do. What is the role of government? Protect its territory, get with private sector and create jobs. And 3, bring about peace and harmony in its community. And they are unable to do that. Because when you have a state of emergency and you have newscasters bringing up things like this.
This is an important witness. The allegation against him by some of the defendants is that he is the one that beat them. He kicked, stamped, beat them man bad. I will not release the photographs and the medical papers. I will speak to Attorney Banner about this matter. But this is more than just this case. We just simply cannot, if the allegations are true, can't proceed this way. There's an important reason, because when somebody says something to the police or they write something incriminating themselves, that is important evidence. The law in our country is that you cannot use anything obtained from an accused if he was threatened, promised anything, coerced, and worse if he was beaten and tortured. This officer.
So there we have it.
Yeah, Greg, we also have,
Yes.
in addition to what Dickie just said just now, we also have the two instances that recently we were talking about where this little boy was harassed in his own home and his father was taken into custody because he was complaining about how they were treating them.
Right.
Under the
Under
SOE.
state
SOE. And then with the young lady with the high official grab and choke and slam her down the ground and kick her in his side. And then a stupid ass commissioner talk craziness, but he don't see nothing wrong with that. He don't know nothing about that kind of stuff there. You don't know about the job then, or you know they understand or know what happened with the personnel then. You know, calling none of them yet put them under
if I may,
discipline.
isn't that why Canada is warning its people? Because they cannot take care of the internal problem. He can get up there and he can
It's not because they can't take care of it, Greg. It's because they're falling down on their face, trying to excuse their criminal conduct under the color of law.
Well, rightfully said, but
they need to go to jail, like what I said.
It starts with the Minister of Police and the Commissioner. And when you have to have state of emergencies that are unconstitutional, then that's telling the world, like I said, you're not ready to protect and serve.
We're beyond our time. We'll take another 2 minutes maximum, and I'll give Ms. Spitz 1 other minute, and then you could take the last minute to close out for us, Greg, including your music, if you could add that all up together now.
I will yield my minute to Ms.
Take 1 minute after that, 2 minutes, and give us your last thought.
I will yield to Ms. Spitz, and then...
No, I could be short.
Yeah, yes, please. Go ahead.
It seems to me that we done diagnose this long time. Our people are being seen as dispensable, and they're making themselves dispensable, because anytime anything reaches our people, it's usually not good for them and it's not good for the rest of people. So the drugs, the guns, the poverty, the destitution, the lack of education, the lack of hospital, the police vehicle reaching and the scene where somebody is injured before the ambulance, and then they look for pronounce the person dead on the spot instead of medical care. The ambulance not getting there early enough. The weed smoking, I will call it out. The alcoholism. And I understand you have some rum worse than the other rum. Remember one time that Cancun, you had something that they put in exotic drinks instead of the true rum. Everything that is being visited on our people, it's because, you know what? It sounds like we people, let's say, we the glut for punishment, and they have an idea. We will laugh this out. We will drink this out. No, we. Then get the people to the position, and our people have gotten slack to the position that always the thing will look easy and no rain on the parade. And, you know, when you talk about the tourism part, it seems to me like maybe they round it up and say that for emergency.
20 seconds,
one facade of peace. What I would want is for Belizean people to take charge of themselves, Get back to a work ethic. Get back to the milk of human kindness. Start to wait and afraid for take Willie time in a school.
Uh,
Help tutor somebody else.
that's it. That's it.
Just like how
That's
we
it.
mind people business.
No.
Be your
That's it.
brothers, keepers,
We
and
gotta go,
sisters.
Greg. Music, Greg. We gotta go. We're beyond.
Ancestors, them get glory. After war and fight for this land, today I feel proud to be Belizean. And every time I walk through the street,